HB 2884 is framed as a parental rights in healthcare bill, but its actual mechanisms reshape how minors access all physical, mental, and emotional health care in Oklahoma. The bill gives parents sweeping power over their child's medical information, removes confidentiality protections, and restricts a minor's ability to speak privately with a doctor or therapist. These provisions are confirmed across multiple legislative summaries, which note that HB 2884 establishes parental rights to be present in all minor health care consultations, removes confidentiality protections for minors, states that a minor cannot refuse to disclose information to a parent, requires parental consent for disclosure of confidential information, and amends physician and psychotherapist privilege laws. Because LGBTQ plus youth disproportionately rely on confidential healthcare access for safety, mental health, and survival, HB 2884 has profound implications for them. This video explains the bill's structure, its impact on LGBTQ youth and adults, and its broader consequences for all Oklahomans. HB 2884 rewrites the rules of healthcare for minors in Oklahoma. It gives parents the legal right to be present in any healthcare consultation involving their child, access all confidential medical information, override a minor's right to privacy, prevent a minor from withholding information, and control disclosure of mental health records. It also removes immunity protections for providers and empowers the Attorney General to enforce violations. This creates a climate of fear for clinicians who might otherwise protect a minor's confidentiality. The bill's language is broad. It applies to physical health, mental health, emotional health, substance use treatment, psychotherapeutic care, and crisis intervention. HB 2884 is not a narrow parental rights bill. It is a full restructuring of minor health care with consequences that fall hardest on LGBTQ plus youth. LGBTQ plus youth rely on confidential health care more than their peers because they face higher rates of family rejection, higher rates of depression and anxiety, higher rates of suicidal ideation, higher rates of homelessness, higher rates of abuse, and higher rates of needing affirming mental health support. Confidentiality is often the only thing that allows them to seek help safely. HB 2884 removes that confidentiality entirely. A queer or trans teen cannot talk privately to a therapist, disclose suicidal thoughts without parents being notified, ask questions about gender identity, seek help for abuse if the abuser is a parent, discuss sexual orientation safely, or access LGBTQ plus affirming resources without parental oversight. The bill forces LGBTQ plus youth to choose between silence and danger. Mental health providers are required to share everything with parents. HB 2884 amends psychotherapist patient privilege so that minors cannot refuse disclosure to their parents. This means a therapist cannot keep a teen's sexual orientation confidential. A counselor cannot protect a trans youth's gender identity. A clinician must disclose suicidal thoughts even if the parent is the cause. A minor cannot speak freely about trauma involving family members. This destroys the therapeutic relationship. It removes the possibility of trust, and it makes mental health care unsafe for LGBTQ plus youth. Transgender youth are hit hardest because gender affirming care is already heavily restricted in Oklahoma. HB 2884 adds another layer of harm by preventing private conversations about gender dysphoria, forcing disclosure of gender identity to unsupportive parents, making it impossible to seek affirming mental health care confidentially, and discouraging providers from offering any gender-related support. Even asking questions about gender identity becomes dangerous. A trans teen who is not safe at home loses every avenue for support. HB 2884 includes a parental abuse exemption, but the bill's structure still requires disclosure unless abuse is proven. This is a fatal flaw. Many LGBTQ plus youth experience emotional abuse, religious abuse, psychological manipulation, threats of homelessness, and coercive control. These forms of abuse are difficult to prove. Under HB 2884, a teen cannot safely disclose them to a provider without risking forced parental involvement. This silences victims, it protects abusers, and it endangers lives. School counselors and psychologists are often the first adults LGBTQ plus youth turn to. HB 2884's disclosure requirements mean counselors must report everything to parents. Students lose safe spaces to talk. LGBTQ plus specific support becomes impossible, and crisis intervention becomes compromised. A student questioning their identity cannot seek help without triggering parental notification. This is especially dangerous in rural Oklahoma, where schools may be the only accessible mental health resource. HB 2884 removes immunity protections and allows Attorney General enforcement. Providers face legal risk for protecting minors, fear of lawsuits, fear of disciplinary action, pressure to over-disclose, and pressure to avoid LGBTQ plus related care entirely. This creates a chilling effect where clinicians err on the side of parental control, not patient safety. LGBTQ plus adults, teachers, mentors, counselors, community leaders often serve as lifelines for queer youth. HB 2884 restricts their ability to refer youth to confidential care, increases mandatory disclosure requirements, exposes them to legal risk for supporting minors, undermines community-based safety networks. It isolates LGBTQ plus youth from the adults who understand them mostly. HB 2884 sends a message. A minor's identity belongs to their parents. This framing delegitimizes LGBTQ plus identity, reinforces stigma, encourages parental control over self-expression, positions LGBTQ plus identity as something that must be monitored, and normalizes surveillance of queer youth. It is not just a healthcare bill, it is a cultural statement. Although LGBTQ plus youth are most harmed, HB 2884 affects every minor and every family. All minors lose medical privacy. A teen seeking help for depression, anxiety, substance abuse, sexual health, trauma, eating disorders cannot speak privately to a provider. Abuse victims are silenced. If the abuser is a parent, the bill forces disclosure to the abuser unless abuse is already proven. Providers face increased liability. This reduces access to care for all minors, not just LGBTQ plus youth. Families with shared custody face conflict. One parent may weaponize the bill against the other. Teens may avoid care entirely. Fear of forced disclosure leads to untreated mental health conditions, sexual health needs, trauma, and substance use issues. Schools and clinics become less safe for everyone. When confidentiality disappears, trust disappears. HB 2884 is framed as a parental rights bill, but its true effect is the erasure of minor autonomy, the destruction of medical confidentiality, and the endangerment of vulnerable youth. LGBTQ plus young people, especially those who are not safe at home, will face the greatest harm, but the bill reshapes healthcare access for all Oklahoma families.